Tehran faces severe water shortage as drought and mismanagement. Iran's president has just made a stark admission: the capital, Tehran, is facing a major crisis. There's no fresh food, and water reserves are running dangerously low. Masoud Pezeshkian warned that without urgent intervention, the city's dams could run dry by September. This comes as Iran experiences its worst drought in 60 years. With rainfall down by 45%, the crisis exposes decades of systemic mismanagement where recurring droughts have been allowed to turn into full-blown national disasters. Pezeshkian told State media the situation was critical, with emergency teams working around the clock to transfer water from other reservoirs. But he admitted these measures might not be enough. Current reserves stand at only 42% of total dam capacity. Just 23.56 billion cubic meters of water entered Iran's dams during this water year, to 42% less than last year. In response, the government has closed offices in 16 provinces to conserve power during a 50 degrees Celsius heat wave. Rolling blackouts have disrupted water pumping stations, worsening shortages. Mohammad Taqi Hossein-Zada, head of Tehran's water company, confirmed that reserves would last only until late September at the current consumption rate. He urged citizens to cut water usage by at least 20% or face systematic supply failures. A man-made disaster and assay climate researcher Kurami told Deutsche Well, that all rivers and water resources within a 100 kilometers radius of Tehran are gone. This, he said, was entirely predictable, but the government failed to act. Iran extracts 54 billion cubic meters of groundwater annually, despite having a legal limit of 48 billion. Around 800,000 wells, many drilled illegally since the 2000s, continue to drain underground reserves. Agriculture consumes 90% of Iran's water, but contributes only 9 to 12% to GDP. Still, government subsidizes water-intensive farming to maintain political and military priorities. Over-extraction has caused some parts of Tehran to sink by 30 centimeters per year. Lake Ormir now faces the risk of total collapse by the end of summer. Without autumn rains, environmental officials warn, the lake could disappear entirely. In desperation, Iran has begun negotiations to import water from Turkey, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Protests, food risks, and social pressure, the crisis is sparking wider unrest. Water-related protests have already intensified amid power cuts and allegations that water is being diverted to private, politically protected interests. Food production is at serious risk as irrigation systems fail and blackouts disrupt farming. Rural populations may be forced to migrate to already water-stressed cities. Citizens are being told to reduce consumption, even as decades of government mismanagement remain unaddressed. Iran's infrastructure was built for a much smaller population and can no longer meet the demands of modern Tehran. This is a governance failure at its core, a regime unable to keep the lights on or water flowing in its own capital. The geopolitical angle for the United States. Iran's water crisis exposes the regime's deeper vulnerabilities. A government that cannot provide basic services to its capital faces serious questions about its long-term stability. Washington should maintain sanctions enforcement while monitoring how this crisis affects Iran's regional behavior and diplomacy. The lesson is clear for Iran and for the world. Water security demands honest planning, not political spin. Corruption and incompetence created this crisis. Now, 12 million residents of Tehran are paying the price. My commentary: it's more than just an environmental emergency. It's a political and social time bomb. Iran's leadership has long used external enemies as a distraction from internal failings. But water scarcity is a crisis that cannot be blamed on foreign powers. It is the result of years of ignoring expert warnings, over-exploiting fragile resources, and placing political priorities over environmental realities. When agriculture consumes nearly all available water but contributes relatively little to the economy, and when subsidies keep unsustainable practices alive, the outcome is inevitable. The tragedy is that Iran could have prepared. It has the engineers, the climate data, and the history of droughts to know what was coming. Instead, the regime acted only when the crisis became impossible to hide, and now millions may face shortages that no emergency plan can fix. If water is life, Tehran's crisis is a warning. When governance fails to respect nature's limits, collapse isn't a question of if, only when. Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe.